So I want to get into. So I sent this to you the other day, Ewok, and selfishly, I will admit he does have a lot of followers on Twitter, and I'm a huge fan of Big Cheds on Twitter. He's a degen trader, as some would say. But no, I think he's a very good man. Won a battle with cancer a few years ago. Really good dude. So shout out to him. I'm sure he's watching this, but yeah, so he is a trader of Bitcoin, and I really value a lot of what he says. And he's been talking about for a while, and I know we spoke about this. I don't think it has anything to do with clicks or attention or anything. It's purely he is somebody who is like live or die with technical analysis. There is no I'm going to throw out some bombastic statement to see what people do. I think he likes to test sentiment with certain tweets every now and then.
Sure.
But he wouldn't say something if it wasn't in the TA for him. Now, this is still what he's talking about here is still a long ways away to know when we would reach new all-time highs. But he has become a believer just because of how long this market has been trading below different levels of simple moving averages that we even whenever, because we've never been in this state, and the fact that we're trading so far below the previous high in the previous cycle, that we will not see new all-time highs in the next bull cycle for Bitcoin. Basically, the way he was looking at it, and again, this is really far out, so I mean, it's up for debate, really. But it's going to lead to the question that's in our thumbnail about whether this is actually the worst bear market ever and what that could really mean. But yeah, his thesis is basically that we could see something like a 45 to 50K BTC, which, none of us would complain about at this moment, but as like the high in the next bull cycle because of how depressed the chart has been for so long now. Right. And then see 100K, new all-time highs in the next bull cycle. So in theory, talking probably, 7 to 8 years down the road. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Ewok. And again, I would encourage it. I'm not doing it justice. I would, check out Big Cheds and actually listen to his specific TA reasoning. But I am curious on that because that would be a precedent, Ewok. And yeah, what you think of that. And then we'll kind of get into the conversation of like where this bear market kind of stacks up.
Well, it's an interesting theory. I don't know enough about TA to really give any kind of feedback in that sense, but I do know about S curves, and I think the way the S curve is playing out. The last time, what we have from 20K, we went up to 70, so it was about 2.2 or 2.3x, or 3.3. I'm sorry. From the last all-time high. So I think this time we could do maybe a 2x. And then the next cycle kind of even out on that S curve, kind of even out and maybe not hit another all-time high. But my prediction is somewhere between 120 and 140K Bitcoin.
For the next bull cycle, you're saying? Right?
Yeah. That's what I've thought, because of the way, the increment of X's go down each cycle, the more you get into that S curve, the less the gains are from the all-time high on the next cycle. So
right.
We still have a ways to go on the upside. However, you're not going to get rich. The people that are getting into Bitcoin now, I really don't think you're not going to get that crazy wealth where you can buy something at a very cheap price and have it go up, 2,000, 5,000x and get that multiple on your return.
Right.
We're past that. There's a lot more adoption. As Richard says, the world's richest guy bought in. You've got countries got in. Who's left? There aren't many people left, and the average retail investor isn't going to put enough money in or economic energy in to have that price go that crazy. Retail will make a difference, and the financial space itself, if they can improve or expand upon things like Grayscale, that could impact it on this next one. But just the amount of energy that it's going to take to see another 3 or 5x, I just don't think we have it. So
Yeah.
I kind of agree with him, but I think he's one cycle maybe ahead of himself.
Mhm.
That's just my opinion.
I definitely see where you're coming from. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, thinking about it in terms of just cycles, you would obviously think that, the further out, obviously, the lower we're going to be. I think his thesis is just that, like, purely looking at the chart, we have traded below a certain range so much that it's going to make it way harder to get out. It's almost like, everybody's talking about what they think the bottom for Bitcoin will be here in this bear market. And a lot of people like, hey, we might go below 10K, and almost like saying it, like licking their chops wanting to buy, which I understand. But 10K is one of those areas that's like major, major support, major, major resistance. So, I mean, you can wish for that, but I mean, if we go below 10K, you may regret it, a few months after that. And I think that's kind of the sentiment that Cheds is talking about. It's like we are trading at such a suppressed price for so long that it's starting to become like, what does this recovery look like? Is it longer? Is it depressed when it gets to its new highs?
So when you say you might regret it, what do you mean? You might regret not buying, or you
No,
might
no, no, no,
regret
no.
getting in at that point?
No, I don't. I definitely don't think you would regret buying, but you might regret it in terms of like maybe you won't regret it long term, but like in the short term, it's like we may be below there then for a while, and this whole thing goes on
Oh,
for a whole lot longer and is a whole lot more depressing than
gotcha.
we previously thought it would be. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a normal bottom cycle. I think, again, just like it did in 2018, it's going to chop sideways. Once we hit that bottom level, it doesn't just go back up. It
Right.
takes a year, usually, and the Bitcoin halvening will happen.
Hmm.
And then after that is when you start to see the cyclical upside again. I mean, that's the previous cycles. Usually, they have some sort of rhyme. They may
Right.
not mirror each other, but they are very similar. So I still think it's going to chop around. Once we do hit that bottom level, it's going to chop around for a good 8 months at least.
That's when people are going to get really chopped up as well. I mean, like
Yeah.
we've talked about this before. This market is so volatile compared to other markets that if it's not going up or down, people usually get shaken out the most and the most stressed out and do the wrong things when it is going sideways. Because
Yep.
when it goes down, anybody who's like a long-term investor that is interested is like licking their chops, getting ready to
Mhm.
deploy any capital they have on the side. When it's going up, I don't really need to explain what's good about that. But when it's chopping, you're just like, man, it's almost like a gambler in some way. It's like you have the itch to do something in the market. And at those points, anytime, this is a practice I use anyway. Anytime you don't know what to do, just remember that nothing is a choice,
It's an
and
option.
yeah,
It's probably your best option.
probably, yeah. If you don't know what to do and there's not something screaming at you in the face, like for example, I'll just say my little personal story, like as far as investing in crypto this year so far. So back in June is when we had the original lows of, man, it seems so far away now, but 17.6K for BTC. We saw a sub $900 ETH, have not approached that again since then. As far as ETH goes, but a lot of the alts bled to lows they haven't seen since. I'm thinking of like Polygon Matic was in the 30 some cent range, hasn't even sniffed that since then. And even though we've had new lows, so there's been a lot of that. And I remember I bet other people out there listening to this right now probably had the same thoughts that I did. I was kicking myself all summer long after that, like July, August, September. I think I started to get in scaling a bit in September, but all summer long, I was like, damn it. Like, I
Hmm.
don't think I missed it, but I still had that FOMO, and I
Yeah.
was just waiting all summer long. So when this stuff happened in November, not just because it was my second stab at it, but because, I mean, you start to get more educated, and I'm sure you can speak to this, Ewok, being through multiple cycles at this point. You start to get more educated on like, I need to be buying right here. And like when all the FTX stuff was going on and it was just blood and drama every single day, I was
Yeah.
like, I have to be buying right here. I mean, it's also good to like wait for that whole, let's get stagnant at that what feels like the bottom for a year, and that's good too. And it's not like you have to rush into it necessarily. But it just felt so bad and so dire in November that I was like, I have to deploy a decent amount of what I've got on the sidelines right now.
Right.
So
And I believe my advice to you was we're not done yet, so Don't do it
Uh-huh.
all.
And I
You know,
didn't, and I didn't plan on doing that. But yeah, you know, I do think it'd be foolish not to when something like that I
sure.
think is going on.
Yep.
But you know, it's up. You know, you're the individual. You have to decide what that is, obviously, for yourself. But I think the longer you're in this market, the more obvious it starts to seem like, yeah, it may not get worse than this. You know what I mean? Like you can start to feel what's really bad, and that's a good segue to the point of this kind of argument we're talking about with what Ched's started here about his thesis about the next bull cycle and the thumbnail of this show tonight. And that is this the worst bear market that we have seen in BTC and crypto's history? I'm going to naturally default to you on this, Ewok, because you've, you know, seen many cycles before and know what it feels like. But there's multiple ways of looking at this. So, you know, I guess you could look at it in terms of price and how far we're suppressed at this point as far as the bear market, but also the events of it and where we are in the world, you know, of crypto. So I agree with you, Almighty Hexakim. We need some more subs. So
We do
appreciate
need some
that.
more subs.
Go find them for
I'll
us.
say hello, everybody.
Yeah, so what do you think, Ewok? Yeah, you recall obviously 2017, 2018 really well. What do you think about summation? I'll let you take this whatever direction you want to go, you know, where we are now versus where we've been in the past. Is this the worst? And I will say one more thing. I put out a poll on YouTube a little bit earlier about whether people thought this is the worst bear market in crypto's history. Now, I will predecess this with it's only like 50 to 75 votes, I think, at this point. And also, most of the people voting on it, you have to imagine, haven't even seen a bear cycle prior to this. That's just
Right.
statistically true. But
Yep.
we are sitting at about a 60-40. Yes, this is the worst bear market in the history of BTC right now. So I will let you give your thoughts.
Well, I don't think it's the worst. We haven't seen that yet to determine whether it's the worst or not.
Right.
Like I said, I think, and you and I both agree that we have some more downside to go. The one thing that is different, and we've talked about this a couple times too, is that the global markets are also down. You know, we're facing a recession. That has really never happened with a crypto bear market yet. I think the last one was 2008. And Bitcoin was not around until what, 2010, 2011 or something like that. So again, this could be different in that sense. It could be the worst bear market that we've ever seen, but we don't know yet. It could flow just like all the other ones. It's on pace to do that. Once it hits a bottom, or you know, if it goes below 85% for Bitcoin, that could signal a much different outcome.
Right.
The time frame could also signal something different. You know, we're still on pace though, with what I had said before, and I think that average out of the last 3 cycles came out to be somewhere in January. So you know, we've not gotten there yet. We can't really determine, you know, that it is the worst we've ever seen or will ever see. It does feel a little different, but every cycle is going to feel differently, because I remember the last cycle when a lot of the shakeout played out. You know, always have to get rid of the corrupt people in the space, right? That is kind of the goal of the bear market, is to shake a bunch of people out, get the false players out, and kind of bottom out, reset, and start over. Um, each market's going to be different how they name it. You know, the
Right.
last time it was the lending platforms. This time it's the exchanges that are leverage trading, or creating false tokens and um, over collateralizing, things like that. So the next cycle is going to be very similar. It's going to have a different name. They're going to slap a different name on it, probably regenerate some of these same contracts that got wrecked again, this time with a different name, different founder, all that. You know, it's going to happen again, just in a different way. So yeah, I can't say that we've gotten to that point yet to determine whether this is the worst one. It does feel a little bit different, but you know, time will tell for sure.
Yeah, we don't not enough data is really the correct answer. But yeah, let me ask you that because you talk about it feeling different. It's got to feel different for you, I imagine, because the last time around, I mean, it felt like um you're in the in the desert looking at a tumbleweed go by with crypto at some points. Now there's all these major players. I mean, like there weren't Tom Brady was not in crypto commercials in
Right?
2017,
Yep.
so at least not that I'm aware. But yeah, so what do you think a lot of it's that? Like even though you may, some listeners right now may laugh at me for saying this, but it is, I think, objectively true. We are undoubtedly in a better place in crypto now than 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, as weird as that even feels to say right now, I mean, it's progressing. We're not at a good point right now, obviously. But do you think because there's all these major players in the game, does it maybe feel way worse just because the whole game gets bigger, so the criminals get bigger, and the criminals do even worse things, so it even
Well, yeah,
feels, just we're, crypto's, it's all going to zero.
for sure. I mean, the biggest thing for me that I can speak for myself is the last bear market. I was broke.
Mhm,
I lost a lot of money.
mhm,
Uh, this bear market, I'm still up about 1,000x. So,
right.
you know, for me, that's what's different. I found the right person to follow and to get the right products to get into.
The cult
Um,
leader.
the cult, part of the cult,
Yeah,
having our next seance here after we end our stream. So,
there you go.
looking for some
Sacrifice some.
live sacrifices and some virgins. So,
Nice.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Cool.
But for me, that's the big difference. It's it has evolved a little bit, and there's been a lot of education for people that have happened, that have gotten into the right things. Not your keys, not your coins. A lot of people learned that lesson and followed the advice of a lot of the intelligent people.
Hmm.
So they're not getting as wrecked, and hopefully, some people, obviously everybody's portfolio is down at this point, some considerable, but everybody has a lot more promise, I think, or not promise, but more hopefulness, I guess, for the next cycle. Where the
Hmm.
last one kind of wrecked a lot of people, and they're like, "Oh my God, what's next?"
Right.
That mentality. So it's a little bit different, at least that I can see. Now, again, I'm in a different community, and there's more positivity. So for the future anyway, I'm sure there's some other ones that are wrecked and things that may never come back. And there's always going to be that with a bear cycle. So
Yeah.
we'll see. But that's the big difference for me.
And it does make sense to your point that as cycles go forward and as people see these continuing, crazy crypto cycles, that you do get more familiar with it and you are able to handle it more. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it would make more sense now that there are less people, I guess, like per capita getting wrecked. But yeah, I think we have to admit it. Again, it sounds silly to say because it's been so terrible for so long this year, but crypto is definitely in a better place than it was 5 years ago. I mean, like you really have to zoom out, I think, not only at the chart, but just kind of at what is going on, to realize that. But yeah, it probably just feels a lot more severe because of some of the major players that there are in the game now and more
Yeah.
money. So,
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more money. There's a lot more corruption. Just
mhm,
everything with about everything with Marty just said it. Ripple effect corruption. We're
mhm.
seeing a lot of that with these big players coming out, and as we've said before, as the tide goes out, you see who's swimming without their bathing suits. So